Okay, so I didn't forget about this. I didn't. It's just I had a lot of other stuff that I was working on, like a new project that is kind of in copyright hell right now. So hopefully I get that sorted out and you'll get to see it soon. And then I was also working on the Something Sweet to Bite video, which took way longer than I thought it would. Was planning on doing Silent Ponyville 2 last month as well, but yeah, this took up most of my time. But here we are. I didn't forget about the fourth and final Equestria Girls movie. Well, final, but we'll get to that later. We're here to see if Equestria Girls, the quadrilogy, ended with a bang or if it fizzled out like most series that go on for too long. So, one last time. Let's do this.
As you join in the legend of Everfree.
Well, here we are, the fourth and final film of the Equestria Girls quadrilogy, and it's,
I mean, it's alright, like, overrated as fuck, in my opinion. I mean, and you know what, though? That's typically how the bullshit goes, you feel me?
I mean, look, it's no Rainbow Rocks or Friendship Games. Hell, I'd even say that it's slightly better than the first Equestria Girls, but again, that's my personal opinion. The movie opens with Twilight waking up late, which is very out of character for her. She's very punctual, and her friends come in to help her pack for the school trip. But while they're doing that, Midnight Sparkle shows up and literally just Thanos snaps her friends out of existence. No joke. And we pretty much get Twilight's arc for this movie stated outright, just right off the jump, that she's worried about Midnight Sparkle taking control again. But our premise for this film this time is that CHS is taking a school trip to Camp Everfree, and roll the opening credits as the bus rides on to the camp, set this time to a road song, Legend of Everfree. Well, honestly, it's pretty good. It's got nice road trip vibes to it. Not as good as Friendship Games or Rainbow Rocks, but you know, still good. Well, they get off the bus at Camp Everfree, and so you notice how Rainbow Dash is wearing long pants here, and you notice how it looks way better than her wearing a skirt. I'm dying on this hill. I don't think she looks good in a skirt.
Flash, right?
Yep, that's me. And you're you. And we don't know each other very well. Cool story, bro.
Bro is just so awkward, man. It's not even the same horse girl. Well, we're then quickly introduced to the leaders, owners of Camp Everfree, Gloriosa Daisy and her brother, Timber Spruce. Timber Spruce. His name is Timber Spruce. What is he? An axeman? A woodsman? Fucking Timber Spruce. And some of these names get really stupid and really on the nose, but like Timber Spruce. Timber Spruce. What is his special talent? Cutting down trees? Well, I guess spruce is a type of wood, but timber? His name couldn't have been like Chestnut Spruce? Or maybe Chestnut's already a character. I don't know. I mean, at least Gloriosa Daisy sounds like a real name. A pretentious one, but a real name nonetheless. The best way I can describe Gloriosa Daisy is, have you ever talked to somebody who tries really, really hard to get you to like them and please everybody? That's Gloriosa Daisy in a nutshell. Twi, or I guess I can just call her Twilight now since Princess Twilight isn't in this movie. Twilight has a crush on Timber Spruce. Timber Spruce! Seriously, I'm sorry, I can't get over this. Somebody got paid to come up with that name, by the way. Just want to put that out there. Okay. Last time. I promise. Well, then Filthy Rich shows up out of nowhere, and this upsets Gloriosa, and she quickly shoos him away, saying that, well, he's just, you know, he's a camp alumni, just coming to check in on things. Yeah, he's not. We'll learn more about that later. The teens get paired up in their cabins, and well, what do you know? Sunset and Twilight get paired up in the same cabin. Although during this, we do see that Twilight is still pretty regretful for what happened at the Friendship Games. You know, her absorbing all a bunch of magic and turning into a power-hungry monster. It happens to the best of us. But all of a sudden, Twilight starts levitating stuff, which means that they're potentially developing new magic, much to Sunset's excitement and Twilight's chagrin. But Twilight manages to talk Sunset into keeping the new magic a secret until camp is over because Well, everyone's had their fair share of magical mishaps over the last year or so, and this is meant to be a fun getaway. Sunset leaves the tent and bumps into Gloriosa Daisy, and she hears a mysterious voice, and I'm sure it's nothing. Meanwhile, the camp dock gets shut down because look at it, it's a death trap. But Applejack has the idea that for their camp gift, which is a tradition where each class that comes leaves a gift for the camp for future campers, that their camp gift will be building a brand new dock for Camp Everfree. There seems to be a little bit of tension between Gloriosa and Timber on the topic of the new dock. I'm sure that won't come into play later. Spoilers, I don't think it does. Or maybe it does. I don't know. You'll have to watch and find out. Flash Sentry is a little upset that this Twilight isn't into him like the horse version is, but I mean, what do you expect? It's a different lady. But Sunset does the right thing and basically gives him some tough love and tells him to get over it. Honestly, I think that's the best advice this guy's received all year. Also, Picasso canonically exists in the Equestria Girls universe.
I'm like the Picasso of noodles.
I don't really know what to do with that information. Does that mean he exists in Equestria as well? Is Horse Picasso real? The gang wraps up construction for the day and heads off to the next event, which is telling campfire stories. Staple of camping. Timber Spruce recants the legend of Gaia Everfree, a malevolent nature spirit who claimed that one day she would return to take back the land the camp was built on. Well, that could potentially be our big bad. That'd be pretty cool. A magical threat. Well, I guess it wouldn't be that different from the Dazzlings, just another magical threat that was most likely banished from Equestria. Probably by Starswirl the Bearded. He likes doing that. Gaia Everfree, according to the myth, also leaves a trail of gem dust in her wake wherever she goes, and I'm sure that won't come into play because it's just a myth. Well, the girls talk about Gaia Everfree and theorize that, well, she could potentially be another creature that was banished from Equestria, but Applejack, being the mom of the group that she is, tells everyone that, it's more likely that Timber Spruce just made that story up on the fly to make for a good story. The girls reiterate that they don't want another school event being ruined by equestrian magic like the Fall Formal, or the musical showcase, or the friendship games, which then prompts Twilight to feel bad and turn in early for the night, and Sunset reminds the girls that, hey, she still feels bad about that, maybe you should stop bringing it up. Speaking of Twilight, she wakes up the next morning with her bed and a bunch of other stuff in the tent levitating. More new magic. Sunset really wants to talk about this new magic, but Twilight really doesn't want to because she doesn't want to ruin the trip for everyone. Sunset tries to talk to Twilight about the new magic, but Twilight is just not having it, and before Sunset can protest, a boat suddenly crashes into the in-progress dock, which really sucks because they were coming along pretty good. And Twilight is convinced that she caused the boat to crash with her new magic somehow. Yeah, it's possible. But a mysterious trail of gem dust left in the water points to Gaia Everfree. Well, unfortunately, the crash resets progress on the dock, and Twilight runs off into the woods, where she gives us our first song of the movie, a ballad, The Midnight in Me. It's a song about how she's still scared of Midnight Sparkle lurking deep in the recesses of her mind, and how she's afraid that Midnight Sparkle may take control and wreak havoc once again. Well, let me try to explain why I think this is the best song in the movie. You see, it got stuck in my head for like a week, and I found myself humming it and singing it to myself while at work. And while I was doing that one day, it kind of just struck me that, hey, this sounds familiar. At least like the purpose of the song felt familiar. And then it hit me. Jekyll and Hyde. It's Jekyll and Hyde the musical, in like the best way possible. Specifically, it reminds me of the song Confrontation, in which Dr. Jekyll confronts Mr. Hyde about the misdeeds he's doing, tainting his scientific work and his legacy. Obviously, it's not the exact same because it's not a song where Twilight and Midnight Sparkle go back and forth, but it's still the same thing about how her fear of an alternate personality taking hold and causing trouble. It just gives the same vibe, but we'll put a pin in that because we're going to come back to that later. Twilight runs into Timber Spruce while she's in the woods, and as he's leading her back to camp, he drops the little tidbit that he once wished that his parents would sell the camp so he can move into the city and go to the mall. He was 10. But interesting, might be a motive of some kind for some dubious actions. Well, meanwhile, the rest of the girls are engaging in camp activities like rock climbing, and out of the blue, Applejack suddenly gets super strength and almost kills Rarity. And then when Applejack is apologizing, Rarity shoves her away accidentally with a crystal construct that pushes Applejack all the way into the lake. More new magic. But just as Sunset and Twilight are processing this fact, they hear Fluttershy screaming coming from the mess hall, and they rush to the mess hall to find Fluttershy and Pinkie Pie covered in pieces of sprinkle. Yeah, it turns out Pinkie Pie's new magic is that she can make sprinkles explode, but only sprinkles, it seems. And also, Fluttershy can talk to animals, which, I mean, yeah, that's fair. Her pony counterpart can do that no problem, so... And then all of a sudden, Rainbow Dash comes zipping in through the front door, slamming into the wall at high speeds. She's got super speed. Turns out when she ran off to go get a harness for rock climbing, she sped off back towards the city, made it about halfway back to Canterlot before her speed mysteriously stopped, but it came back once she got closer to camp. Which means there's probably something at the camp that's giving them these new powers. Possibly Gaia Everfree? Maybe it's Midnight Sparkle? Probably not, but maybe Gaia Everfree. Applejack tells the girls that they should just ignore the new magic until camp is over so they can all enjoy themselves, and once again Sunset reluctantly agrees, despite the fact that she's really interested in this new magic, and she's also the only one who hasn't developed a new power yet. Oh, sorry, it might be an element of harmony only thing, sweetie. Whatever, it's time to make paper lanterns, and Twilight starts keeping her distance from her friends because she believes that Midnight Sparkle is the cause of all the new magic. But later that night, Sunset wakes up to see that Twilight is missing from her bed and heads off into the woods to find her. She manages to track down Twilight right before she grabs a cab back to the city, and Sunset grabs Twilight's arm, and suddenly she sees everything. How Twilight has been feeling, and her fears about Midnight Sparkle. See, turns out that's Sunset's new magic, which I guess you'd call empathy? I mean, one of the writers of Equestria Girls did say that if there was an element of harmony for Sunset, it would most likely be empathy. Or, as I like to call it, the Deus Ex Machina built-in flashback machine. The two girls have a nice heart-to-heart and decide to head back to camp. I guess Timber Spruce is an axeman after all, because he shows up out of the blue wielding a fire axe, scaring the girls, but turns out he was just out gathering firewood. Morning, you Timber Spruce, you're a little sussy. As Timber is leading the girls back to camp, Sunset notices there's gem dust coming out of his pocket. Looks like we found our Gaia Everfree after all, gang. So Sunset rationalizes that Timber must be using the legend of Gaia Everfree and staging all these events with the gem dust in order to try to drive people away to make the camp fail, so his sister will have to sell it and they can move to the city like he always wanted. The next day, the girls were having a lot of trouble working on the dock since AJ's going really slow because she doesn't want to punch holes through the boards while trying to nail them down, and Rainbow Dash is going really slow and bringing new pieces of lumber because she doesn't want to accidentally go speeding off into the woods. Again. You know, just girl problems. Sunset shows up and tells the girls that they should just embrace their new magic with another song titled, well, Embrace the Magic. And I just gotta say, man, I love Rebecca Soyket's voice. I gotta respect talent. I mean, the fact that you can sing as two different people and make it sound like two different people is just very impressive. So throughout the montage set to the song, the girls use their new magic to finish the new dock in no time flat. Sunset runs off to go find Twilight, but she ends up overhearing an argument between Gloriosa and Timber Spruce. She then runs into Flash Sentry, who thanks her for the tough love advice that she gave to him earlier. And they kind of do this weird thing here where they kind of hint at that Flash and Sunset might get back together at some point, but spoilers, they don't. This goes nowhere, and he rarely ever shows up in anything ever again after this. Rarely, or at least not in a speaking capacity. Sunset then follows Timber Spruce out into the woods to the rock quarry. Ooh, that is really hard to say. Rock quarry. Rock quarry. Rock quarry. Quarry? Rock quarry. No, quarry. Rock quarry. Ah. You know, the one he said that was off limits at the beginning of the movie. Sunset calls Twilight to meet her at the rock quarry later that night, where they find Gloriosa Daisy, who basically admits to being the cause of all the mishaps that happened, so it wasn't Twilight. / Midnight Sparkle. Sunset grabs Gloriosa's arm and uses her new power to see that Gloriosa fell behind on payments on the camp, which is why Filthy Rich showed up, because he basically gave her a month to come up with the money she owes him, or else he's going to repossess the camp and bulldoze it to build a big fancy resort. Ah yes, the true villain of this movie, capitalism. Apparently, at some point, some equestrian magic hit the quarry, creating the magical geodes that give Gloriosa the power to control plant life. She tried to use the magic to make camp more exciting and better, but ended up instead causing all of the accidents that we saw. We also find out that Timber made up the Gaia Everfree legend in order to cover up for Gloriosa using the magic, and was spreading the gem dust to further cover her tracks whenever an incident occurred. Huh, so Gaia Everfree is just a myth. Twilight and Sunset try to reason with Gloriosa, informing her of the dangers of equestrian magic, but she doesn't listen and instead grabs the remaining geodes, which transform her into a monster that kind of resembles Gaia Everfree, actually. Gloriosa uses her newfound powers to trap the two girls in the cave with a giant boulder, and heads back to camp where she gives us probably the best villain song out of all of these movies. We will stand for Everfree. Chills. Just, chills. Every time. Gives me chills. The rest of the girls try to use their newfound powers to save the other campers from being imprisoned in vines, and also try to break the vines that are wrapping around the camp. But every time they destroy them, they just come back. Meanwhile, Sunset is trying to convince Twilight to use her new magic to levitate the boulder out of the way so they can get back to camp and help their friends, but Twilight is still trepidatious because she's still worried that the magic will awaken Midnight Sparkle. Twilight finally steadies her nerves and uses her magic to move the boulder out of the way, and her and Sunset take off back towards camp. Meanwhile, at camp, Timber is trying to reason with Gloriosa, but she's just too far gone and he gets trapped in vines. Twilight and Sunset make it back to camp, and Twilight once again uses her new magic to pull the vines apart so they can get through to camp. Gloriosa manages to fully encapsulate the camp and everyone in it in thorns, but at the last minute, Rarity throws up a barrier to protect them. And Sunset once again pleads with Twilight to use her magic so she can pull the brambles apart and they can get the geodes away from Gloriosa. But Twilight just can't do it because she's still worried about Midnight Sparkle taking over, and Sunset, very platonically and not homosexually at all, grabs Twilight's hands and tells her that they won't let that happen, and it's a great moment.
You are not Midnight Sparkle. No, I am Twilight Sparkle, and the magic I carry inside me is the magic of friendship.
Hell yeah, Twilight ponies up and uses her powers to pull the brambles apart and yank the geodes from Gloriosa's neck, and each one of them fly to the other girls, turning them into new beautiful superhero toyetic forms that I think are really fucking over-designed. But, what are you gonna do? Gotta sell toys, right? Well, Gloriosa confesses that yes, the camp is getting repossessed and there's nothing she can do about it, but the students of CHS come up with the idea to hold a fundraiser to reach out to past alumni for donations, and maybe they can make enough to save the camp. But Gloriosa states that there's no way they could organize something like that and send out invitations all in one day, but the girls use their newfound powers to do just that, holding the gala in the Crystal Caverns. And hey, the Rainbows even perform a new song, Legend You Were Meant to Be, which, it's a pretty good poppy song. The ball is a smashing success, and they managed to raise enough money to save Camp Everfree. No, come on. Kiss. Just kiss. Ah! Man, come on. Look, I don't like Timber Spruce, but even I kind of accept that they're kind of cute together. Well, as Sunset and Twilight are standing outside of the quarry, Sunset ponders one final question. Just exactly where did the magic that hit this cave come from? Well, we, the viewer, get an answer to that as we pan to the Wonder Cult statue at CHS, or at least what's left of it. See, turns out, when Midnight Sparkle destroyed the Wonder Cult statue at the Friendship Games, it caused a crack to form in the statue and presumably the portal, allowing equestrian magic to seep through, which is a great setup for a potential series. Look, Legend of Everfree is probably the second weakest entry in the franchise, in my opinion. I mean, it's not bad. It's not as bad as the first movie, but I don't know, it just doesn't really justify its own existence for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of things I liked about it. Twilight's arc throughout the movie being chief among them, with her being fearful of Midnight Sparkle taking over, but there's not really much else to it than that. It's kind of just a nothing burger. This could have been a special instead of a movie, and it would have had the same impact. But like I said earlier, Midnight in Me perfectly conveys Twilight's fear of being overtaken by Midnight Sparkle again. The girls getting new superpowers from the magical geodes is a nice, interesting touch that essentially turns this into even more of a magical girl story than it already was, and it will play a big part in the following specials after this. Gloriosa Daisy isn't as unapologetic of a villain as, say, the Dazzlings or Abacus Cinch, but she still serves the same narrative purpose of showing that even the best of people can be corrupted by equestrian magic. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, as they say. I will also add that the fake out of the Gaia Everfree legend, making you think that the big bad behind everything was going to be some sort of vengeful equestrian tree spirit, is a nice touch, but ultimately unnecessary. Since I had the thought earlier that Twilight's arc reminded me of Jekyll and Hyde, I figured I might as well go a little more in depth about what I meant and what I think would have been a potentially better story for this movie overall. I don't know, I just couldn't help but brainstorm. So I would just go full Jekyll and Hyde, all in on the Jekyll Hyde Midnight Twilight Sparkle dichotomy. Just fully, you can even keep the magical geodes. In fact, this version of the story I'm about to propose wouldn't really affect that at all. I would make it so that the geodes are what are giving Midnight Sparkle enough power to manifest and take control of Twilight. Have Midnight Sparkle periodically take control, have her do things that Twilight wouldn't normally do, have her, I don't know, mess with other campers by levitating things and moving things around, have her hit on Flash Sentry, because I think that would be funny to see him get really flustered. The girls will have to struggle with Twilight acting differently while also dealing with their newfound powers, until ultimately Sunset uses her new magic by touching Twilight and seeing that Midnight Sparkle has started to gradually take control. You can still have Gloriosa mucking about with the geodes, trying to make camp better, and it ultimately backfiring and still causing the accidents, and as a bit of a misdirect for Midnight Sparkle, but Twilight's struggle for control over her alter ego should be at the center. In fact, I wouldn't even change anything about the climax of this movie. I think it would still fit this version of the narrative perfectly, with Sunset and the rest of the girls banding together to help Twilight defeat Midnight Sparkle in her mind once and for all, fully taking control, no longer having to worry about her alter ego. But that's just what I would have done. Let me know what you think about that in the comments, or what you think this movie should have been. Ultimately, Legend of the Everfree is pretty inconsequential. That concludes the Equestria Girls movies. Thank you so much for coming down this walk on memory lane with me. Leave a like if you liked, and consider subscribing. And hopefully join me next time as we look at the Equestria Girls specials, every single one. Hopefully.